Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions, your weekly dose of what's brewing in the commodity space. I'm Manisha Gupta. The economic survey presented in the parliament today found that despite the pandemic, agriculture has remained the economy's silver lining. Meanwhile, contact-based services, manufacturing and construction sectors were the worst hit. The survey also noted that the centre's recent reforms in agricultural markets will enable the creation of one India, one market and offer more opportunities to the farmers. According to the survey, the agricultural reforms would enable farmers to sell where they get the best deal and thereby allow competition, an essential condition for the welfare of the small farmers. The observations come as the three laws that seek to liberalize trade in farm produce have been met with resistance by farmers who demand that they be scrapped. This while the government remains firm on the laws, the imminent budget has provided the sector to put forth their demands. So what does the sector that feeds India expects on Monday? Joining me now to take this discussion forward is Rajat Wahi, Senior Director at Deloitte India. Rajat, hi, I appreciate you joining us on CNBC-TV18. First of all, the One India, One Market is something that the government has been talking about. What is your sense on what the agriculture as a sector could see coming in from the Finance Minister on Monday? We have been looking at that focus on food processing, on exports, on retail, on farm to fork. What is your sense on what could be top of agenda? Rajat, will try and get back to you. Couldn't really hear you there, but it clearly has been about the farmers and the agriculture which the markets have been looking at, especially with the kind of concerns that the industry is looking at in sense of agriculture. The expectations running from the farm sector are quite on the higher side. As I was telling you, it really has been about focus areas like farm to fork, the supply chain, and also focus on exports, also on food processing. Those are certain areas, Rajat, that perhaps the Finance Minister could touch upon. What is your sense?
So Manisha, firstly, thank you for having me here. Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you look at the overall food, the agri and food sector in India, and just looking at some reports from last year, the close to 40%, if you look at the UN Food and Agri report, close to 40% of food is wasted in India, depending, at various points of the supply chain. And I guess my sense is that today we need to move that needle. If you look at that, amounts to, by their estimates, close to about $14 billion of food wastage that happens in our food and agri value chain. So even if you look at saving 50% of that through efficiencies, through automation, through improving the infrastructure, through connecting the farmers to mandis, to better markets, I think all of that will help to really put more money in the hand of farmers, less wastage in the value chain, and hopefully better value to the end consumers as well. So it is really required to have a better infrastructure. I think clearly the government is working on better connectivity on roads. There's a lot of focus around building better highways, improving the overall transportation sector. Just speaking to various transport companies, the truck coverage has gone up from 200 plus kilometers a day to 400 kilometers a day. So again, hopefully connecting the India, the market in a better way. But I think my sense is that the debate really needs to be on how do we save this 40% wastage? How do we bring it to 30, 40, 50% over the next 4 to 5 years? Take the $7 billion out of that 14 billion that we waste and make that into improving the overall infrastructure, improving the lives of the farmers, and providing better value to the end consumers. I think these are some of the areas that I would like the government to focus on.
Rajat, what COVID has taught us in 2020 really is that a lot of stuff can really go online. We've seen grocery as the biggest in the retail sector, and there are expectations that in next 5 years, the online grocery, could really gain up by 8 times. How are you reading these numbers, and what's your sense on how the pattern in consumer minds are changing?
So consumer consumption behavior has clearly changed during COVID. I won't say all of this is going to sustain post COVID, and once we get the vaccinations and people are going out. Remember that 90% of Indian retail is still offline retail, or of which about 80, of that about 85-86% is your current mom and pop retail, about 8 to 10 million outlets. So a lot of India is still about small retail. They are the ones who made it very, very efficient, even for the e-commerce players. If you look at last mile deliveries through Kiranas, through your neighborhood stores. So they have continued to facilitate that. So my sense is that, yes, E-commerce today, which accounts for 3% of overall, or pre-COVID accounted for 3% of total retail of $850 billion, or and was expected to get to 7-8% by 2025. It may have got there already this year, and we will see what the numbers come out at. But I think the expectation is that in the next 3 to 4 years, it will become 10% of overall retail. If you look at China today, e-commerce accounts for about 25% of the total retail, even for a market like China, which does, where the overall retail is about $5 trillion, e-commerce accounts for about $1.5 to $2 trillion. So we are still very, very early days on that. We are still on the journey, but clearly, the whole lockdowns has given a big impetus to the online trade. But I think some of that, the offline is going to claw back as shops open and as people get more and more comfortable visiting stores and their malls.
All right. So, expectation really, Rajat, is that this budget could really look at the impact of COVID as well. And the finance minister would want to correct a lot of sectors in that sense. So when it comes to e-commerce, and as you said, yes, not everything is going to change post-COVID. You will see a lot of people go back from what we've seen in 2020. But when you look at the e-commerce as a policy, as a subject, what is your sense on what the finance minister could really look into?
So I think on the e-commerce front, the government, the finance minister and government has already done a lot. There's already a lot of incentives in terms of investment. FDI is allowed. They've actually benefited a lot from all the sort of FDI that has come into India. You've seen the large transactions that have happened in the e-commerce space. So my sense is that e-commerce today is already on a very, very good footing, continue to grow. One of the areas that their ask is that can the exports out of India become easier? Today the expectation and the ask from a lot of the large e-commerce players, they want to make this into a $10 billion to $15 billion exports out of India. This year, I think e-commerce would have touched about $1 billion of exports pre-COVID at least, or I'm not sure what the numbers are coming up. Can we make it easier custom clearances, easier to remit money, easier for returns? E-commerce, I mean, a lot of the exports were still set up for large volume exports. But when you start looking at individuals ordering from nearby countries today, and if you just look at what happens in China on the November 11th Singles Day, close to 80 countries have ordered for products from China, where China has actually gone and delivered the products through various mechanisms. Sure. How can India become a larger export market through e-commerce? Could be an area which could be looked at. But I think a lot of the help is required for offline retail, brick and mortar retail, the mom and pop retail. Can we look at automation of kiranas through POS machines? What can be done to fund that? Can the retail sector be looked at, can retailers be included in the MSME categorization so that they can access loans, they can access, then, they have a recognized body so that they are able to sort of, open stores 24/7, looking at the model sort of the Model Shop and Establishment Act. I think some of these areas need to be looked at by the government. And I think the presentation has already been made by Retailer Association of India to the government on some of these points.
All right, so that's a long list really of what can be expected and can done from during this budget from the finance minister. The requirements are huge, and especially when we're coming back from pandemic period, the hopes from the sector also are on the higher side. Raja, thank you so much for joining us with that wish list to the finance minister. But with that, it's time for a short break. But don't go anywhere, because Godrej International's Dora Mistry and director Tarun Arora of IG Group of Companies will join us to discuss what the edible oil and food processing space expects from this budget. We'll be back in a jiffy.
TV18.
I must compliment the way the data was presented to us in digital format. Not only easy to deliberate and come to a decision, but also much more efficient. The deliberations also were very quick, keeping in mind the format. So we could come to decisions in a rather short period of time. The audience will probably look at how corporate India is looking at the year ahead and what it holds for us. I think it is going to be a very positive outcome for all of us.
Standard Chartered presents CNBC-TV18 India Business Leader Awards.
Presented by Standard Chartered.
Welcome to Commodity Champions. And while all sectors clearly are pining hopes on the Finance Minister in expectations of what could come their way from the budget 2020-21, but it is the agriculture sector which has been going through some troubles, especially because of the unprecedented farmer protests which have even now continued. There could be something more that could be coming in sense of allocations and schemes and implementations when it comes to agriculture. But within this as well, it is the edible oil sector, which is the third largest imported commodity after crude and gold. There are a lot of expectations within this sector as well. And to discuss that in detail, I am now joined by Mr. Dorab Mistry, is Director, Godrej International Limited. Mr. Mistry, hi, thank you so much for joining us. What is your sense this time around? Because we are expecting that a 5-year national edible oil mission perhaps could be launched. It has been in conversation. Do you see that being talked about?
Yes, Manisha, I hope you are right. I think this is a test to see the credibility of the information and the leaks that are coming out from Krishi Bhavan. Is it worthwhile talking to the Agriculture Minister? Is it worthwhile talking to the Agriculture Ministry? I think we will know in the budget, because we are hopeful that after many, many months of consultation and many promises, finally, the national mission on oilseeds will be launched with a proper budget to boost and encourage the growth of oilseeds in India and thereby reduce this damn big deficit that we have on the trade account because of vegetable oil. So yes, I am hopeful, I am optimistic, but we have been hopeful and optimistic before. So I really don't know.
All right. So, Mr. Mistry, you know, India spends 750 billion rupees on imports of edible oil. Do you think something could come in phases? I mean, I'm assuming it can't be at a one go, but even if it is about a national mission, do you see, it being broken out?
Possible. I hope something comes out. We don't expect all good news to come in one go. So at least the launch of the mission and a budget for year 1 and year 2 would be a step in the right direction, particularly for what we call Project Mustard, where we have recommended our association, the Solvent Extractors Association, has put forward a remarkably well-costed, well-thought-out scheme that we give the farmers a golden hello, attract them to switch from wheat to mustard, particularly Punjab, Haryana. And as a result, we grow a crop that we require, a crop that uses minimal water, and we get rid of all these surpluses and various other problems. So yes, I am hopeful. There is one other request, earnest request to the government that we have put forward, Manisha, and which you know very well. Some months ago, the Indian government cut the import duty on palm oil from 37.5% to 27.5%. Now, this was a mistake, but all governments have a right to commit mistakes. The government did it out of good intentions to help the consumer. It didn't work that way. But now, with prices declining, I think it is absolutely urgent and imperative that that cut is reinstated and the duty on palm oil is once again hiked back to its original stable level of 37.5%. I think I cannot tell you how important this is, particularly when the government wants to build credibility with the kisans and the farmers. You can only build credibility if the farmer gets the price that he has been promised, and that will only come about if the duty is stabilized. You cannot have a cut price duty and a full price for the farmer. The two things don't go hand in hand.
Well, yes, some balancing act is something that the government perhaps will have to come out with this time. Mr. Mistry, also the industry has been demanding bilateral safeguard duty on imports of palm from various Southeast countries. This has been under the free trade agreement. Do you see government addressing that too?
I hope so. We have requested them, but this is a mistake. First of all, this is a mistake made by the previous government. So I don't know why our present government is shy about it. They can rectify it very easily. The previous government, we told them when these free trade agreements were negotiated, let one person from the industry accompany the minister or the secretary, because we bring insights to the problem that the civil servants can't. and the government rejected our offers of help. And now this is the result. So these are mistakes made by the previous government. There is no reason for the present government to suffer the consequences. So I think they should be bold, dynamic, and honest and rectify this. Nepal, Bangladesh don't produce vegetable oil. So all these imports of palm oil through Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, these are all Mickey Mouse monkey business. It's better that we have proper, open, honest business, and the government should take the necessary steps. I am sure our neighboring countries will understand, because the country doesn't benefit. It's one or two corrupt businessmen who benefit by doing these things. So I hope our minister is listening.
I have a final question before I let you go, and this one really is about what would be your top priority from government this time around, because this practically is the last budget before the government hits that 2022 when it had promised about doubling farmers' income too. So do you think there could be a special push that could be coming in that direction? So while of course we've spoken about the edible oil as a sector, but if there was something that you would want to ask from the sector or agri sector as a whole, what would that one thing be?
Take steps to ensure that farmers get remunerative prices. That is the most important. If it means putting MSP in the law, go ahead and do it. It doesn't cost anything, because MSP is a fact of life. But at the same time, take steps, and the government has taken some positive steps in that direction to see that the farmer gets the price that he deserves. If you do that, all other problems will be taken care of.
Mr. Mistry, thank you so much for joining us. Well, that's a long list for the finance minister to look at. And yes, all sectors are wanting a lot. The expectations are high from the finance minister this time around. But let's move on and invite Tarun Arora, who's Director IG International. He joins us now. Tarun, hi, good to have you. As I was saying, all markets, all sectors are expecting a lot from the finance minister this time around. There also is an expectation that there could be higher allocations when it comes to horticulture, to food processing, and the focus could also be perhaps on exports of commodities and to reduce wastage of food as well. What is your sense, and what are your top asks from the finance minister this time around?
I think we as entrepreneurs and businessmen really looking forward for this agri-infrastructure push in India, which has still not come, I believe. Still, the innovation and the research is missing. So we would really like the government to increase their spending on research and innovation, especially on the agriculture side and on the crop diversification side. And also the ag infrastructure. I mean, in terms of cold storages, again, there is lack of adequate infrastructure facilities when it comes to APMC markets, when it comes to wholesale markets or the other wholesale markets. Those facilities and any increase in infrastructure spending towards those facilities will really help reduce losses and wastages. And over and above this, I feel that there's already good work going into road development, but it's still taking a lot of time. Still, a trip from Bombay to Delhi takes a lot of time, and I know we've been talking that the road infrastructure is getting better, but yeah, it's taking maybe a bit longer for it to get better. So maybe an increase on the road infrastructure will really help us to move our goods faster, reduce the overall turnaround time from reaching point A to point B.
So, well, yes, infrastructure spend is one thing that perhaps the finance minister has already kept an eye on, but also talk to us about the fresh produce itself. What is your sense when it comes to the exports and the imports? We do understand the last few years that has gone slightly difficult as well. Do you see easing of some of those norms coming across?
Absolutely. I mean, things with post-COVID, I feel we are now more global, and there has to be this direction for us to follow, because we can't be any longer be a closed economy. So we have to open ourselves for exports as well as open ourselves for imports. And for exports, I feel India as a country is growing. There is good interest from the global investors coming in, wanting to invest into India and to grow something which is more suitable for markets for our neighboring nations and maybe going into Middle East. So there is one such thing that even we've gone into, which is blueberries, and we are now, India could be looking at being a blueberry exporter in coming 5 years. And And likewise, there has to be government support for businessmen and for entrepreneurs who are looking to increase spending into this space, giving them resources for them to really be able to compete globally, for us to increase our exports. But that's the way to go. And at the same time, even for the import side, in terms of how our consumption is growing, India definitely grows a lot of products, but there are few that we cannot grow, maybe due to the climatic conditions or due to the overall issues in terms of scarcity of land, and it does not suit the weather condition where we have the land, but maybe scarcity of water. So we need to be open and close to our relationships with other countries and our friends outside, and make sure we don't give a negative message that India is no more global. I think India is global today. India needs to go ahead and take a lead, as we have done in pharma sector, in agriculture as well, diversify, grow something that can be consumed with the global consumer, and also import.
All right. I remember last time we spoke about cold chains, and while you did mention about that in your first answer, what really is the situation right now? Because I remember you were concerned about on how once the vaccine starts rolling in, some of the cold chains perhaps could have been taken. Now that we are in the process, these are still initial days, but has the sector been impacted?
Not really. I would really want to say Indian consumer has started consuming heavily. So in fact, at this moment, we are facing a huge food shortage than actually oversupply. So right now we have these supply shocks that we are figuring out how to manage those, because the gestation period for us to go from growing from, let's say, 100,000 ton to 150, it takes 3 to 4 years once the farmer decides, okay, we're going to plant, and then they search for the land, and so these are high gestation period for us to grow further. So but at the same time, post-COVID, I feel the lifestyle change that has happened to the Indian consumer, we're really currently facing huge shortage then really. So that was not anticipated at all, and the numbers are definitely very strong, and we see this growth to continue in India. And Indian consumer being very bullish in terms of when it comes to consumption of food products.
So, Tarun, when you look at year-on-year growth, what have been the numbers when you look at fresh produce, and how is 2021 looking now? Because 2020, yes, there were a lot of concerns when it came to travel, transportation, labor, etc. How are you looking at both of these things?
It looks very positive. The last quarter, the one which is continuing now, is really, I would say, I've never seen a quarter like this over the last 15 years since I've been in business, and it's very positive. 2021 would be one of the years that I would see India to really transform on agriculture for sure, because as this consumption really make the transaction increases, people make more profits, so there'll be more investment definitely coming into the sector globally.
Point taken, Tarun. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, that is, of course, the ask coming in from fresh produce, right from infrastructure to cold chains to easing of international trade norms is what the expectations from the Finance Minister are. But with that, that's all the time that we have on Commodity Champions. Thank you for watching.